G'day, it's Joel Rasmussen from Southern Cross Combat, and I'm here at Dominant MMA in Abbotsford talking to Adele Fornarino. First off, Adele, I thank you very much for the time. How is your Tuesday treating you?
It's been brilliant. Yeah, Tuesday's always like right in the crux of things. Like we started hard on Monday, we were jumping straight into it on Tuesday, gonna hit it hard on Wednesday. So it's just like the build up is just slowly getting more and more intense as the week goes.
I thank you so much for the time. It's been a wild couple of weeks. There's been a lot going on. You just got back from Sydney. I just got back from Sydney. How has it been? Because I do you live here? Do you live in Australia?
Yeah, so I live here in Australia. I live in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So I lived in Perth for 3 years through kind of the back stages of COVID. But I live here in Melbourne. I just spend an obnoxious amount of time in America, just training and hanging out there.
So I thought you were coming home at the end of last year for like the holidays. And so I was like, hey, I know you're in town for the holidays. I don't mean to bother you. It's Christmas time. If I could grab some words with you, I'd love it. And now it's February, and I'm like, why are you still here?
Look, there's this rumor going around that I'm currently living in America, which just isn't true. I just spend a lot of time there, and it's just every time that there's a massive fight coming up, I'll go there, do a camp, spend the time there, which is really important for kind of my process in competing. But Melbourne is home. My family's here, my partner's here, so I'll always kind of boomerang back to Melbourne.
And if I'm not mistaken, on one of those websites, and of course you have to believe everything you read on the internet, you are billed as American. There's the American flag next to your name, which is, how do you feel about that?
I think at least 3 times some platforms have mucked it up where I was either Brazilian or I was American or I was Canadian. They just don't want to acknowledge Australia as a country. They just don't want to. They want to pretend like we don't exist.
Disgusting. That is disgusting. I understand American, meaning if you spend a lot of time there, I can understand people just being like, she's American. Canadian and Brazilian. Why do you think you get that?
To be fair, I have no idea. I think the Canadian came from like we're Commonwealth, so they just put all Commonwealth countries as the same. It's Canada because it's the closest Commonwealth country that they know. And Brazilian is like, oh, if they're not American but they're good at jiu-jitsu, well, they have to be Brazilian. It's the only logical explanation for it.
In a way, is it almost a compliment?
Yeah, I would have no problems being called a Brazilian or a Canadian because they're both amazing countries, so I have no issues being called. But I do like to tell people that I'm Australian. I'm very proud to be Australian. I'm very proud to have done my training here and growing up here, and I love Australia. That's why I always come back.
It's either a compliment or like lazy racism to be like good at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, probably Brazilian. Talking about some of the accolades. As I mentioned, it was I want to talk about the future. I think it's a great time to do this interview because we can talk about the past and the future. But talking about the past a little bit, so it's 2 ADCC medals, 1 who is number 1 title, but it was 2 who is number 1 matches, 1 at the start, 1 at the end, if I'm not mistaken.
So I've done 3 WNO matches right now. So I've done 1 against Tubby, 1 against A-Rod, and now 1 against Sofia Casella.
And that was all 2024.
Yes. So I got the last minute call up for the Tubby fight, which was in, I want to say something around February.
Yeah, it was 1 at the start.
Yeah. So that was a 2-week notice match. And then I had the A-Rod match just before ADCC. And then in December, I had start of December, I think end of November, I had the Sofia Casella match.
And that's 2 medals and a belt, if I'm not mistaken?
It's, 2 belts and a medal. 2 belts and a medal.
Do you get a belt from ADCC? I thought it was a medal.
So I got a medal for my division, and then I got a belt for the absolute. Well, I got a belt and a medal for the absolute.
Oh, so it's 2 belts, 2 medals.
Yeah, but like when you say 2 belts, 2 medals, then it sounds like 4.
It's 2 belts and 2 medals. It's 2 belts and 2 medals. Put that on the marketing. How did 2024 treat you? 2 belts, 2 medals.
Well, at the risk of just adding to this, I also got the Grapplefest title. I re-got the Grapplefest title. I what do you call it?
Defended?
Yeah, defended my Grapplefest title, so I also got that one. So the year was 3 belts and 2 medals.
When I do these interviews, when I introduce the guest, I put like a lower third graphic up, and it'll be like name, accolade, Instagram handle. Yeah. So, if I'm talking to someone, it'll be like whatever champion. I'm going to have to put like 5 things in there. Thank you. It's going to take up half the screen. But what do you make of your 2024?
I'm really proud of my 2024. I think that 2023 was definitely a building year for me. It was my debut year as a black belt. I learnt a lot from that year. I learnt a lot about myself as a competitor. I learnt a lot about what my desires are in the sport and where I see myself in the future. and what I'm willing to do to get there, and just the hard work that I'm willing to put in and the time that I'm willing to put in. I also learned the benefits of growing the people around me and growing the team around me, just to add professionalism to myself as an athlete. But then 2024 was when that kind of all came together, and I ended up having an 18 fights, 18 wins year, 18 wins like throughout the entire year, and was very happy with that. I think I came out with the highest submission rate out of any female grappler. I'm proud. I am very proud of that year, but I also very much know that it's the beginning, and I know that I'm going to use that as a springboard to continue the success through this year as well.
I want to talk about the ADCC in particular, because you are the first Australian ever to win ADCC Worlds, I believe, like the sub thing there, because there's obviously all the ones around. Yeah. But you're the first Australian to win ADCC Worlds, and you didn't just do it once, you did it twice. To have that accolade, not even the twice accolade, but just in general, to be the first person repping Australia to do it, kind of like, what does that mean to you?
It means a lot to me, but I think the main thing is that it shows the locals here that you don't need to be in America or Brazil or any of those hubs, that it just comes down to hard work and dedication and consistency and persistence and all these things that you hear a lot on the scene, you hear a lot of people talk about, but it's the reality of it. If you stay super disciplined in your training, motivation will go up and down. Some days you feel motivated and you want to train and you feel good about it. Some days you wake up in the morning, you couldn't think of anything worse than getting on the training mats and having people just try and smother your face. But consistency is doing it when you don't want to do it. Consistency is getting on the mats even when it's tough and you're sore and it's hard. And that's where the results come from. But to kind of prove to the people in Australia that we can do it from Australia meant the world to me.
How do you keep that consistency when you are on those days where you're like, this sucks, I want to stay home? What do you do to get yourself, whether it be here, whether it be you're cross-training somewhere else that day, like, how do you get yourself there?
As soon as you kind of enter the conversation of should I, shouldn't I, it's already a tough battle. For me, I try and avoid ever having those conversations. I have a schedule. I pre-plan the schedule at the start of the month, at the start of the week, to make sure that there's no guesswork through the week. We know what work needs to be done, and rain, hail, shine, I get it done. Whether or not it's the best session of my life or the toughest session of my life, it doesn't matter. Like, the actual work is still getting done regardless of how I'm feeling. So it's no longer a conversation of am I going to train today or how hard will I train today. It's I have a job to do today and I'm going to go out there and do my job. It's like with anything, like a desk job is the exact same. Some days you don't want to go into work and you have to, because otherwise you're not getting paid. So it's the same kind of thing. If I don't go into work, if I don't go into my job, then I don't reap the benefits of the hard work that I put in.
And now I don't mean to flex on you here by saying this. I've done one jiu-jitsu competition in my life. Okay, I got a bronze. It was 4 people. I got a bronze. I did the gi and the no gi. Got a bronze in the no gi. Terrible in the gi. Terrible in the no gi too, but still. But that was enough for me. Bronze at a very local white belt comp. I debated bringing the medal. I debated being like, look at this.
You should be wearing that thing non-stop. That is a badge of honor.
I debate. It sits in the background of my interviews when I'm at home.
You know what you're going to do? You put it at the front of your house, just so if anybody comes in to try and rob you, they know what they're walking into.
Some people have security system. It's just that.
Yep.
But I want to talk about after you win your gold ADCC for your weight class, but you know the open weight's coming up. What is that feeling like? Because it's something you've worked so hard to do. You have accomplished one of the goals. You know the other goal's coming up. Because the moment I got that medal, I was like, I'm done. I don't care anymore. I want to go home. So what was that period of time like? Because you're in a very strange in-between of like, I have climbed one mountain, there's another mountain to climb, and who knows if I climb that one.
So the way that ADCC works is, or at least this year, it was different in the past, but the way that it worked this year or last year was they ask you, like, after you're done your finals match, if you want to be a part of the openweight division. Now, I'd been speaking back and forth with Mo, kind of telling him that I was interested in doing it, but that being said, through the training camp, it wasn't the main focus. It was kind of the back thought, but the main focus was getting the division done and doing that to the best of my ability. And then Mo was sitting there at the edge of the mat after I'd won my division, and he had his little clipboard, and he's like, "So are you doing it? Are we putting your name down?" I was kind of like, looked at my coaches, had a brief chat with them, and at the end of the day, my body was fine. I felt mentally quite good. I felt like I was on a high. And the main reason behind it was I had nothing to lose. I was one of the lightest in the entire competition. I was I think the third lightest competitor that was there. There was no expectations. It was fun. I genuinely enjoyed competing. I enjoyed being out there, like absorbing the atmosphere of that event. So I just didn't want it to finish. So I'm like, let's just do another division. And that's kind of what we did.
To get something tacked on like that, like how do those roles compare? Because you go out for your weight class, you're like, I'm here to compete, I'm here to do this is what I have been working towards. And then you get this like, yeah, why not? Let's do the open weight. Are you kind of more relaxed? Obviously, you're still competing to win, but are you more like, this is a little bit of fun right now? Like, how do you kind of approach when you're doing it then, the open weight?
It was definitely like when I registered, it was definitely, this is a bit of fun and it'll be an enjoyable experience and something that, people would pay a lot of money to be able to experience what I'm experiencing. So why would I deny myself the opportunity to do that? But then there were those little moments of when I was sitting backstage and some of the other competitors from the heavier weight classes were getting ready for their open weight matches, and I kind of look them up and down. I'm like, okay, I need to not get injured. That was a big thing. It was funny. I ran backstage. My parents were there in kind of our warm-up area, and they were there to congratulate me for my division. I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, I'm doing the absolute, by the way. And my mum's, the words that left my mum's mouth was, just don't get injured. It wasn't win, it wasn't do that, it was don't get injured, make sure you come out in one piece. I was like, okay, fair enough. So I had to listen to my mum and make sure that I stayed, safe, because there is the added on danger of they do carry extra weight and they do carry more strength than I do, so let's not break anything. But I just went in there confident in my jiu-jitsu. I did a great training camp. I felt very confident in the work that I'd put in, and that was why I was able to reap the rewards of the hard work and dedication that me and my team put in there.
And something that the people watching will definitely notice during this interview, something that I feel is so connected to you. Literally before the interview started, you ran out to go grab it. The lovely daddy hat that you were wearing. First off, is that versions of that hat available for purchase anywhere?
They're going to be coming out very, very soon. They're currently in manufacturing. They're getting manufactured. They're getting made.
You're in China somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Getting printed.
That can be on your Instagram. I'd assume there'd be a link in your bio at some point.
There will absolutely be a link in my bio very, very soon. The hats are going to come, along with some other fun little merchandise things that you guys are just going to have to wait and see. But we're going to drop some daddy merch for sure. But yeah, it's I get asked about it on the daily about when these are dropping, but very, very soon.
Excellent. I for one is definitely happy to hear that. I wanted to ask about the nickname Daddy. So King Casey O'Neill talks about having the nickname King, and she likes that in the female space she has a word that is associated with the masculine. I was wondering if is it a similar thing for you? Is there kind of that sense of pride with you being having the nickname Daddy?
100%. I think that a lot of these words have these very alpha connotations to them. Words like king, words like daddy, are very assertive, and that's what I like to be when I'm on the jiu-jitsu mats and when I'm training and when I'm getting ready for competition. I'm assertive, I'm dangerous, I'm aggressive, and that's kind of what I want to incorporate into my competition style jiu-jitsu. I'm a submission hunter. I like finishing matches, and that's about being aggressive. So definitely the daddy persona encompasses that for me.
I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but now it's 1,000,001. Where does the nickname come from? Is that something you adopted for yourself? Did it get bestowed onto you? How did we get to know you as Daddy?
It got bestowed on me. It was I was training, getting ready for some of my matches leading into ADCC, and I was just kind of walking around the mats, puffing my chest and being very intense with my training at that time. And Alanis would she just made a comment. She was like, you got this, and she had to kind of think for a little bit. She's like, you got this daddy energy about you. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever at the time. I'm like, I kind of really like that. And then we were chatting about the W&O, the first W&O that I did with Tubby, about ways to make the press conference interesting, ways to catch people's attention and just kind of make a statement. And she's like, write something on your nails, write something in your fingernails in nail polish, and we're kind of looking at it and doing the maths of it, and it's like, Daddy worked perfectly. So I got it done on my nails, and then when I got to America, my manager actually had ordered the first iteration of the hat, so I wore that, and then the traction that got, and how people could, like, how it resonated with people, and they understood it, and kind of took that into their own training. I really liked that people could use it, because it does encompass what I try and do on the training mats. But that's the origin story.
Is it almost a bit of maybe like a, I don't want to use the word persona, but like, it's going to be a funny way to word this. Do you go like daddy mode? Are you like right now we're just chatting, you have been doing a little bit of training, but you're not trying to choke me out in this interview, which I appreciate, thank you. But so like this is a little bit more like laid back, but when you're walking, when you're out the back, you're warming up, are you like daddy mode activated?
Yeah, like, it's funny because after the nickname was given to me, I didn't notice it too much, but then I started noticing it more and more, that when I do compete, I do, like, something does switch, something switches off, and then something else switches on. And that is a little bit of that daddy persona of, okay, we're out here to do our job. We're out here for business, and it's a combat sport, so we're out here to break things that need to break and not get broken. That's kind of what jiu-jitsu is.
We've been talking about your previous year, which was, if I'm not mistaken, I like to be up on the grappling, but, you know, we all make mistakes sometimes. Those were all... The Who is number ones were super fights, right? And the ADCC is a tournament,
Yes.
but Who is number one were super fights.
Correct, yeah.
Right, cool. I just wanted to make sure. But you are booked for an upcoming super fight. How does one approach the different? Like, how is it different to in preparation and approaching a super fight? Because although you have an idea of the jiu-jitsu world, you can kind of guess who's going to be in the tournament. You don't know for certain compared to knowing I have to grapple this person on this date.
I think like, brackets versus super fights come with their own challenges, because when you have a super fight, your main focus is on them, but their main focus is on you. So it kind of balances out in that way. Whereas when it's a bracket, it's all guesswork, and everybody in that division did guesswork about how the bracket was going to end up. No one was right. No one could anticipate what the actual bracket ended up being, and that's just how it goes. You have to be ready for anything. Going in there with a very clear strategy. Yes, for each individual fighter, we had our own little bits and pieces that we were specifically working. But being very confident and well-rounded is, I think, going to be the key thing, especially for bracketed divisions. I think, gone are the days where you can be good at one thing. I think you have to be well-rounded. You have to have a top game, a bottom game, upper body submissions, lower body submissions, good back takes, good back consolidation and attacks. I don't think we can get away with one thing anymore. We can't be single-dimensional, and if you can grow every aspect of your game, then you're ready for any competitor that steps in front of you.
And as I mentioned, you are booked for a super fight on the UFC Fight Pass Invitational 10, the Big 10, against, I believe her pronunciation is Ffion Davies. There's two Fs, but you only say the first one, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. That's perfect.
Thoughts? As I mentioned, we were going to do this interview at the end of last year. I was going to ask you about her, a possible matchup with her in general, and then you guys end up getting booked together. So how did this come your way?
For us, we always wanted the match. There was no mistake in that. Like, neither of us were ever backing down from the match or afraid of the match. Both of us wanted the match. We just wanted it done on an appropriate platform, and we wanted to make sure that we got paid appropriately. I think that's the main thing. Unfortunately, in the industry, female grapplers are still a little bit undervalued, and part of our job, being at the highest level that we are, is to increase the market, to pull the entire market value up so that the next generation that comes through can get paid what they deserve. So we just needed to wait patiently until the right offer got put on the table, and we were both ready to accept it. We were both ready. It was I want to say something like a 7 to 8 week turnaround between accepting the match and actually having the match. So we had an 8-week training camp, and I think that we're both very excited. It's an amazing platform to have this match done on, and we're really just trying to raise the bar for everybody.
And now, is that something that you talk to her and you go, let's work this out, and then you like shop it to people? Like, do you go around? Does the UFC approach you and say, hey, do you want to do this? Like, how does it end up being on the UFC Fight Pass Invitational 10?
Well, they approached both of us individually, so we never necessarily like work together in a sense, but it's kind of a mutual understanding that we're both trying to achieve the same thing, which is making sure we're getting paid appropriately and making sure we're pulling up the market value of female grapplers in general. It's almost an unspoken thing that we both very clearly understand that is our job as being athletes where we are. And the right opportunity came up, and it's all worked out very perfectly, and the timing is brilliant for us. So it everything, all the puzzle pieces have fallen into place perfectly.
Very glad to hear that. What do you make of Ffion as an opponent?
I think she's fantastic. She's been around on the scene for quite some time now. She's had very dominant performances across multiple different styles, multiple different rule sets, multiple like gi and no gi as well. So I'm definitely ready for the challenge. I think she has some spots that she's very, very good at, and I'm going to be ready for a war out there, and just making sure that I'm comfortable in every position, making sure that I'm keeping all of the positions that I feel comfortable in sharp, making sure my submissions are feeling sharp, but again, being very well-rounded is something that's very important. I'm very excited for the match because I think it's going to showcase very, interesting but also technical female jiu-jitsu.
And I got this information from the same website that said you were American, so let's not pretend it's gospel.
No,
but
you're going to have to tell me which website it is.
it was Tapology.
Oh, I'm going to need to call them up.
We all know that whatever Tapology says is gospel. But in that research, this is not the first time that you and her have met in grappling?
No, we met in 2022 at the first ADCC that I did. She beat me in that match, so I definitely have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about that one. Want to get that one back for sure. I think I'm a very different grappler from when I was then. I think that there are so many bits of growth that I've put into my game that just make me a completely different grappler and person in general.
That's what I was going to ask. I wanted to ask about. It has been 3 years since that first meeting, and it's been so much development for yourself. What have those developments been? How have you changed since the Adele of 3 years ago?
I think a lot of it is about, I touched on it before, but the professionalism of what I'm trying to accomplish. It's the beautiful part about where we sit as jiu-jitsu athletes is that there are very successful athletes in other sports that give us the blueprints of some of the things that we can do to better ourselves as athletes in general. You talk about the Lionel Messi's, Ronaldo's, Djokovic's, all these athletes that are absolutely succeeding in their sport above the average level. We just need to look at what they're doing, and we need to start incorporating that. And part of that was delegating things that are not necessary for me to be doing. So things like nutritionists, strength and conditioning coaches, having a coach to help analyze tape study and things like that, making sure we're planning out each session. Djokovic doesn't get on a tennis court and go, I guess I'll hit 3 forehands and 6 backhands and then do a few serves and then I'll go home. He's got a coach there that goes, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to do this for 20 minutes, and then you're going to take a break, and then you're going to stretch this, and then you're going to do, everything is planned out. And that's the way I want to approach my training. Everything is, planned out in advance, so it's not guesswork. We're making sure that everything has meaning behind it, and that's what's going to allow us to make sure that we're ready by the time the match comes on.
I wanted to talk about that training. As I mentioned earlier, you were doing some cross-training just before this. What does when you're at home in Oz, what is kind of your training regiment like in the way that MMA fighters can train at one gym or they can train at multiple gyms, but that's because they can go to I'm going to go strike over here and do this over this. There's some, but there isn't heaps of gyms that are we only do jiu-jitsu. Yep. So for you, someone who only does full-time jiu-jitsu, what is your training like? Where do you go? Where do you get your looks?
So I cross-train quite a bit. I think it's important to train in spaces that offer different things and getting different reactions, and different gyms have different specialties, so getting exposure to that consistently is really important. So I'll train, one place in the morning, one place at night. I'll lift in the middle of the day. And then when I go to Atos, majority of the training I do when I'm in San Diego is at Atos, but they have a lot of really good high-level girls on the mat, and also people from other gyms come into Atos, so there's still that exposure of different games and different styles. It's not like a cookie cutter factory at Atos. Everybody has their own different styles, which is really good. I think that it's just really important to go to places that give you the best training. Like, and if you can't necessarily go to those places, or some of these bodies are scattered through other gyms, it's really important to have good communication between good training partners. Invite them, get them on the mats, get them training, structure a training session with them. In my experience, if I've invited people onto the mats and then sat them down and go, okay, this is what we're doing today, they actually really appreciate it. And a lot of time I'll get messages after those training sessions pretty much being like, oh, that was fantastic training. I really appreciate that we got really good work done, because there was no guesswork to it. It was just, let's get our shit done today.
But when you are in Melbourne, like, what are those places? Dominance is one, Absolute is one. Like, where do you go?
Mainly between Dominance and Absolute, they're the two ones. But obviously Dominance have a few different locations. So Absolute St Kilda is where I hit out the most of my morning sessions with the crew down there, and then Dominance Abbotsford some nights, and then Dominance Thomastown some other nights as well. So kind of between those three spaces are the main spaces where I'll be training.
You were mentioning Atos a lot over in the States, and as one that can afford to be not literally because of money, but can afford to be a central, because a lot of people come there, and that's a place you can spend a lot of your time at. I don't know the B Team boys personally, but they rep B Team really hard. I don't know if that's the only place a lot of those guys go. What do you make of the Australian grappling scene, and do you see a time where we can have like a B Team, like an Atos, a place where it's like, oh, just go there and do it?
I think that we're very close to it, if not, like, it already exists in some little pockets here and there. There's some really good gyms out in Sydney that are doing very well. There's obviously some gyms in Melbourne that I just listed before that are doing very well. I think the main thing about Australia having one of those hubs of jiu-jitsu is literally just travel. Because we are so far away from America, we're so far away from Europe, where some of these massive events are being held. So things like Polaris, WNO, UFC Fight Pass, One Championship. I think One Championship is probably the one that's closest to us, because that's generally in Thailand and around areas near us. But majority of those other events are overseas. And whether or not it's the fact that the fight promotions don't necessarily want to fly Australians, like, they have to, the Australian that is getting chosen to be in some of these events either need to already be in America, or they need to be like smashing everybody, and they need to really earn their spot for these fight promotions to warrant spending X amount of dollars actually flying them out. I think that is the main problem. If we do have a gym here that is able to support those the travel of these athletes, I think then we can have a very strong hub of jiu-jitsu. It just comes down to being able to financially support some of these fighters.
I feel like jiu-jitsu is in a really interesting place of growth right now due to those promotions and those things that you listed. The UFC obviously getting kind of behind it, helped by people like yourself, people like Craig Jones, who popularize the sport. You were at UFC 312 this weekend. What was it like? Because that's outside of a strict jiu-jitsu event. That's probably the biggest conglomeration of people who would know who you were. Did you get any were people coming up? Do people come up and say hello? Like, what was your week in Sydney like?
It was a whirlwind of a week. It was absolutely crazy. I got to meet some extraordinary people that are very like-minded, in the sense of they aspire to achieve the best in their sport or the best in their media field or whatever it's going to be. So it was really cool to see that. It was very cool to see the professionalism of the actual event itself. And as soon as you go backstage, everybody's like looking at you like, oh, who's this person, that kind of thing. I got a couple of eyes and a couple of photos here and there. But it was funny because we were staying at the same hotel as a lot of the athletes. Me and Brianna St. Marie and my partner were there. And a lot of the time, because Sydney was so hot, we were walking around in singlets. So our shoulders were out and we looked like big and tough. We looked like fighters. Yeah. And at the Hilton, there was a bunch of fans of the UFC kind of camping out the bottom. And every time me and Brianna were walking out of the elevators, we'd get people looking at us like, oh, they look like they're fighters, but I can't quite pinpoint who they are. They look strong and tough. And then they're like, oh, no, I don't recognize them. That's okay. It was kind of that moment. But I think jiu-jitsu has the potential to kind of move into that space. Like Craig Jones is a good example, where he was walking around and getting people yelling out to him that may not be necessarily deep in the jiu-jitsu space, but in the MMA space, and they recognized him and they wanted photos and all this kind of stuff. So I think we're slowly moving into mainstream, which is very cool to see.
It's a very weird feeling of like walking and people are like, you're not who I thought you were. And you're like, oh, well, screw you, dude. I'm just trying to walk through the lobby. Like, you're not going to be rude to me.
Yeah, it was one of those moments of like, you could tell that they're looking and they're just like, they're trying to figure out if they know. And then they're like, no, I can't figure it out. You're like, okay, that's fine.
The nicest someone could walk up and be like, "Why are you in shape?" Like, hey, you're muscular. Why? I don't understand. It confuses me. Why?
Yeah, exactly. It's and then it's the like then you got to explain to them. No, I don't do MMA. I do jujitsu. Jujitsu is the part of MMA where it goes to the ground and everybody starts booing.
Yeah.
That's the part that I do, and I do it very well.
When you yell out, "Stand him up!" I never think that. I have to ask this because I'm an MMA channel. Sorry.
Yeah.
Would you do MMA?
I got asked so many times this weekend if I would do MMA. As long as my mum doesn't watch this, then I'm fine. Yes, I especially after this weekend, seeing the athletes and seeing, like just how driven they were and how dedicated, and also getting a look at that UFC belt, that 115 belt. And I was like, oh, that's shiny. I really like that. I'd like to have a crack at MMA at some point. I need to tick the boxes with jiu-jitsu first. That's definitely my first priority and where I'm putting all my attention. But maybe I'll start dabbling and see if I like it. I do jiu-jitsu because I enjoy it. So if I get the same amount of enjoyment out of competing in MMA, then yes, yeah, I'd make the transition.
Headline incoming. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. What are the boxes that are left to tick? Obviously, the one that stands right in front of you at the moment. But what are the boxes that you feel you would have to tick in BJJ before you went, let's put on the gloves and punch some people in the head?
For me, I want to leave a legacy of my jiu-jitsu. So part of that is winning all the titles consistently. So winning one set of ADCC titles is great, it's cool, but I'd like to do that again. I'd like to show that I can back it up and it's not a one-time thing. And then I started jiu-jitsu when I was 10 years old, and I started doing majority gi. So to win a gi world title would make the 12-year-old version of myself very, very happy, very proud. So a gi world title would be cool.
And now we're talking about a little bit of business, if we can. You were talking about money before, and I'm not going to ask you how much you make because that's not the question. But talking about that business and such, Craig Jones, a man who took a big step to, I would use the word revolutionize kind of the BJJ space. The UFC is now investing in the BJJ space, but I don't know if you follow Craig on Twitter, but he says stuff like, if you do not have a CJI clause in your contract, get one, because people are going to want to be involved. What is kind of your deal with the UFC? Are you signed to like the fight pass? Because they've signed Mikey and stuff. Like, is this a one fight deal?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
No, I'm just trying to break the news.
No, to be fair, I actually am not allowed to discuss anything to do with my contract with the UFC. Have to be very tight-lipped about that. But I am excited for the opportunities that this year has to offer me, and it should be a very big year of competing.
I'm very happy. I didn't mean to put you in a bad position, but I do appreciate the answer nonetheless. Did you get a chance to see Craig while in Sydney?
I did. I saw him at the day of the weigh-ins. I said a quick hello. He had just gotten off the plane from God knows where, because he just travels around the place. I did say a quick hello. I'm lucky that me and Craig get to chat back and forth every now and then. He's been nothing but lovely to me, nothing but supportive of me, and I'm very appreciative of that. I appreciate people that are looking to lift up the entire community, and I see what he's doing, and he deserves the respect that he has earned from trying to just elevate the jiu-jitsu community in general. So yeah, I think all the things that he's doing with CJI is very, very exciting.
You mentioned the UFC 115 belt. You were there. You were cage side. What did you make of Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez, a match that everyone thought would be a grappling match? And was a grappling match, but maybe not in the way people thought it would have been.
Well, I think they're both amazing athletes in general for their own rights. Obviously, Zhang very good at stand-up, but showed the world recently that her grappling is fantastic as well. Her wrestling defense is fantastic. Tatiana she started wrestling when she was, 3 years old? So she has a lot of knowledge in that side of things, and she put it to work this weekend. That first round, she was looking really good, and then Zhang kind of got a little bit of a rhythm going and was able to capitalize on some of the grappling exchanges. Zhang has a fantastic grappling coach as well. Josh Hinger was ringside with her. He's part of the Atos team, and he's a fantastic grappler, just a wealth of knowledge, and has been helping her improve that side of her game. So I think she's a very good example of an athlete that is moving towards being well-rounded, and constantly trying to evolve and trying to improve herself and better herself as an athlete, and that showed this weekend. It showed at the dominant performance that she had for that title fight.
Adele, I've got a few more for you. I appreciate the time. I won't take too much more of it. Um, but I wanted. Oh, I've already forgotten what I was going to ask. No, I remember. I remember. Um, I'm very fortunate to talk to a lot of high-level athletes, local scene, international scene. I'm very, very fortunate, much like yourself, as in athletes like you. I don't think you're fortunate to talk to other great athletes because you yourself are a great athlete. I'm fortunate to be sitting next to you. Um, and a lot of those athletes are female athletes. You know, I've been very fortunate to talk to people, and over the UFC weekend, I got a chance to talk to Ioane and Jacek at like a community event, and she was helping out with holding pads and helping people box, and she did a really good job of making sure to get the girls involved. I don't mean to put like the entire weight of feminism on you, because I don't think you're doing this like for feminism. You're doing it for you, and you're doing your best just in general. But what do you make of like the development of women's jiu-jitsu, girls programs and stuff like that? Like, how do you feel women's grappling is coming along?
Well, it's funny you say that because like elevating female jiu-jitsu and female grappling in general is definitely something that is front of mind in a lot of the decisions I make. I want the industry to be a better space for the next generation of girls that come through, and because there's so much depth and talent there. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen some young grapplers that are just starting out, and all they need is a little bit of belief from people around them to really make a massive difference and a massive impact on the scene in general. Yuana is an excellent example of that, where she makes an active effort to encourage girls to participate in the sport and encourages them to believe in themselves and take that next step to becoming an actual athlete. I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by female athletes that have done nothing but support me and motivate me. Liv Giles is an excellent example of that, where she set the foundations, especially for female grappling in Australia, after having two very successful other like professional sports that she did. She was a gymnast, and then she was a velodrome cyclist as well. So she very seamlessly has moved into the jiu-jitsu space and has elevated it so that then the next generation can continue to elevate it. But I think that that's what we do. We will keep raising the bar and keep making the space better for the next generation.
And finally, for me, Adele, you talked a lot about training with purpose, coming in with a goal. It's Tuesday, and for me, that's Jiu-Jitsu day. I'll be going to Jiu-Jitsu tonight. What should I do tonight in training?
You top player or bottom player?
What do you look at me? What do you think?
Not a bottom player.
Really? That is a huge compliment.
You're a top player?
No.
You're a bottom player?
I'm like a get squashed and
We love
type of guy.
We love getting squashed and getting squished. I'm an overhook player, so I'm all for like half butterfly overhooks, choi bars, triangles. I'd be looking for like really good control from those positions and just making it as deadly as possible. Like, see how many submissions you can get tonight, and if you get a little bit messed up trying to go for submissions, do it again tomorrow.
Should it be all different variety of subs? Should I like just attack one thing tonight?
I'd go both arms and then the head. So like choi bar, arm bar, triangle.
It's a choi bar.
A choi bar is like a far side arm bar, but with a particular control. But instead of coming underneath, you're coming over the top.
I'm gonna lie and pretend I know what you're talking about.
If you subscribe to Submeta, Lucky Jars has some really good choi bar stuff, and then soon I'm gonna have some really good choi bar stuff on Submeta as well.
Excellent. Actually, I said I had one more, but that was a lie. This is now another one. Something I found really interesting after you had the great year that you did last year, you talked. I think it was on the Craig Jones podcast. You were like, the best thing about winning all this is that I can put it on my seminars. Like, you can put it on the poster of like, look what I did. Now come to my seminar. How was the seminar circuit for you?
The seminar circuit was good. It's very interesting. The seminar circuit in Australia in general can be a hit and miss, and I think some of the reasoning behind it is because I'm from Australia, so I seem very accessible to a lot of the Australian grapplers here. Unfortunately, it's also the fact of not unfortunately. Something that I've noticed is a lot of the participants in my seminars are women, which is fantastic, and I definitely want to have as many women on the mat as possible. I think it's time that the guys get on the mat as well and realize that my jiu-jitsu is not just fellas. My jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. It's not female jiu-jitsu. It's not male jiu-jitsu. It's jiu-jitsu. It works on everybody. And I think that the guys need to pull out their socks, get on the mats, and realize that they can learn from anybody. It doesn't matter the size, shape, strength. I have the utmost respect for the 100 kilo guys that come to my seminars, because they acknowledge that even though they're bigger and stronger, that they can learn something and become better grapplers in general by coming to my seminars, which I appreciate.
Just in case me asking the question cut off there, because it's only high quality gear here. The camera shuts off every fucking 10 seconds. I asked about the seminar circuit, just in case we lost that. Adele, I thank you so much for the time. It's an absolute pleasure to speak to you, to meet with you. I'm going to wipe my hand here because I'm sweaty. But I thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.